response action. And I think it creates a good incentive for people to do assessment work early. Because if you get a bunch of data and you adequately characterize your site, you may be able to demonstrate that there's not a substantial hazard. If you don't get a bunch of data, then you're forced to rely on smaller data sets, and then the IRA may help, sort of push investigation in areas where it's appropriate.
And if you haven't done it, then it's a tier 1 site at that
Right,
point.
default.
But it becomes a requirement, like to complete
Right,
your phase
but
one.
the incentive for doing it earlier is if you haven't taken care of it by the point of tier classification.
Then you're
it
out of
becomes a tier
compliance.
1
Yeah,
site.
right, like there's a cutoff there. So keeping the short-term notifications, I mean, I think CEP gets you a lot of them on its own.
Could you mitigate it in the first year before it's an IRA?
Just like it's
Well, right.
imminent hazard.
Yeah, right,
Right.
this is what I mean.
Imminent hazard, you really.
Well, no,
as
no,
an
no,
IRA.
no,
No, so
Yeah.
not necessarily notified.
No, I'm
No,
not
but,
talking
no,
about
but okay,
imminent
let's
hazard.
say
So
there's,
essentially, right.
Yeah.
there's lead or
Right, so
arsenic.
you could mitigate that.
Right, there's
mitigate
arsenic
that
in
the first
soil.
year.
And then take that into account. in
Right.
your
You know you
classification.
have a
You could do
substantial
a
hazard.
RAM.
So you're doing it as a
That's
RAM.
And
Yeah.
mitigate it.
So it
and then
creates
you don't have
incentive
a
for people to-
substantial hazard or
That's
an
right.
IRA or end up as a tier 1.
And
So
those are the
I think it
incentives
would
you
be
want.
good to make it tier 1. because-
So seriously,
Well,
people
you know,
behind you
you're-
cannot hear what you're saying.
We got-
We
we got-
can't hear
one
what
at
you're
a
saying
time.
when people are talking. We can't hear. Please.
Okay, what it was saying is if you go
Well, should we
through,
open up the?
right, if you go through what was just proposed, where you say you're required to look at, doing a substantial hazard review at the time of tier classification, and if you had that,
I was told.
if you had a substantial hazard, it would require an IRA, therefore you would become a tier 1. But what it would also do is provide the opportunity during that 1-year time to mitigate it. So let's say you actually figured out that you do have a substantial hazard. You don't have a reporting obligation until phase 1, so you could do a RAM and mitigate it before you got to the point of having to do the phase 1. So you promoted early cleanup.
Yeah.
And the benefit is you've mitigated the substantial hazard, you documented it through your RAM, and then you don't end up with an IRA or a
Tier
fa-
one.
a tier 1.
Why would you do it as a RAM? I mean, what's the downside of?
Or you do it as an IRA.
Do it as
You
a
do it as an
IRA.
IRA, whatever, you do it as a preliminary.
Well, I guess it
Once you
could become an
identify
IRA.
the condition,
Well, then it
you
could-
can have the same
Yeah,
vehicle of
Right.
addressing
So
it.
do
So when we do
Okay,
the,
you could do
so
one.
as part, how would we capture that though? So in that scenario, you've
Okay.
captured, you've gotten your, let's keep it in soil, let's keep it like arsenic in soil.
Right, because
So
area is
you-
a different issue.
Right, so you didn't trigger any of the earlier notifications. You ran the calculation and knew you had a substantial hazard.
Yep.
But you fit into the 120-day
You've already
notification.
notified.
you already.
So you've notified, but is it an IRA? I mean, I guess.
I mean,
Well,
So you
would
can,
you do
it
the
would be a
response
voluntary IRA.
Well, that's
You
why
would
I think you
elect
do it as
to
a
do an
RAM.
IRA, it's not an IRA in response to a 2-hour
Right.
notification. But so I would think
I think
about
you do
this
it-
logic similarly to
You
like,
think
there are
RAM.
incentives implied in the MCP for like, let's say, if you close your site within a year, right? There are incentives in the, or
In and out.
or within 120 days, right? So this is sort of, so that can incentivize people to like
Pretty rare
move
that happens.
Yeah.
to do things, and this is the same sort of idea, that if you have a requirement that's coming up at a year, that you know that that's coming, and that you can then do things to address it.
The only thing I would say to that is I don't think we want to move away from defining IRAs as required actions. So at the point that you do the assessment, then you know you have the condition, then it would trigger the required IRA.
So
I
it has
think in this
substantial
case,
hazard
It may
trigger
not
IRA.
occur if you may not have done it for 6 months, but
Right.
once you have the information, then it shouldn't be ever considered
Sure.
voluntary.
Sure, I think that's fine, and I think works with this logic.
She's advocating IRA. That's
Well,
what,
that's okay.
that's
I
what
don't,
it's
I don't
saying.
think there's
Then
any.
Is that if you know you have
IRA.
a substantial hazard, that somehow it should be an IRA, not a voluntary IRA, but.
Yeah, my thinking is that we're 22 years into this program.
Yeah.
There are some things that we've held tight
That's-
to. IRAs are required actions.
I think
and-
that's
and-
totally
And I
fine.
think anything that
Erase
makes
the
that
RAM.
fuzzier makes it
Yeah, so erase the
more
RAM.
complicated.
I think that's fine, I think it's just, the timing of it, you sort of have a year up until the tier classification. You either do it at a year, that's the latest you can do it, or you could choose to do it sooner, right? It's the same idea about like filing a permanent solution sooner than 5 years. You can elect, you know you have this deadline that you have to reach, and but you could expedite your response actions and do it sooner.
But, okay, but if you don't, if let's say for whatever you choose, whatever the reasons are, you don't do an early mitigation. So
Wait, so you have a substantial hazard condition?
you have a substantial hazard condition. Is if you are not mitigating it, do you have a notification obligation whenever you figure out you have a substantial hazard condition? Or that notification can get delayed until tier classification unless you want to do mitigation?
So let me just clarify.
Kind of like
because
you
this
can
is-
have,
yeah,
you can have a situation where
yeah.
you know you're gonna do a RAM, it's not required, you have something else that you're gonna clean up, you know you're gonna do a
So you
RAM,
wanna wait?
and you wait till you file
That's right.
your
And
RAM,
this would
and
allow
there's a
that kind
reason
of
for that. So,
flexibility.
like, for example, I could see, I can just hear Elliot, it's like, I'm on a construction site, I've collected a lot of soil data, I know if I did this, if I ran it through, it would become a substantial hazard, but I'm not ready to go dig for another, 9 months. So I don't want to have to notify early or have to tell you,
Let's just talk that through. So what would be,
right?
what if I didn't, or what if somebody did? And so at the 1 year anniversary became a tier 1 site.
Right.
What is the additional obligation for a tier 1 site today as opposed to if it was a tier 2 site? It's a higher compliance fee? What else?
Higher compliance fee, well,
Yeah.
for that particular situation, you'd have an open
have an
IRA,
open
so
IRA.
you have the IRA status reports. and-
Well, I think,
Well,
but,
no, he's-
no, but he's
So
saying,
say
No,
no.
he's saying doing it as a
what they're
RAM.
talking about is that
There's a-
here,
Yeah.
And
You haven't done
it.
anything
This-
yet.
this-
you haven't
There's
done
a reason
anything,
that you may
you
not
haven't
have done
proposed to do anything, but now you're admitting, you're saying,
The site is
checking off the
fenced,
box that
yeah.
it's a substantial hazard.
Right,
So
so can I wait
what's-
till then to do it?
What's the downside? What would be the additional obligations of a
You,
tier
you
1
need
site?
to, you either need to require or incent people to do, if you
No,
want
I'm
accelerated
saying I don't
response
think you
actions.
need to.
No, so I
you
think
want
the
to.
solution to it is within that first year, if we're comfortable with the first year, and you do
I don't
substantial.
know, I don't know that they are.
Well, whatever, with some time period.
Yeah.
Some time period, well, we can back up, because if you're not comfortable with like anything other than like 3 days or something, then I think we're going back to the other.
Or at the 120 day, I mean, I guess beyond the fact that you might not have an LSP, it seems like you guys want action earlier than
120 day
later.
though, I had,
Yeah.
as a digression, I had a really interesting experience with a 120 day notification. We always, I don't know what everybody else did, but I'm gonna tell you, we always did 120 day notifications, and you know what? We wrote a cover letter, it had a figure with it, it even had a site plan, if there was multiple samples. Okay, we put together a little package for 120 day.
Gouging
I-
plan.
Thank you. Look who's safe talking. So anyhow, we put this together, ran it to an attorney, he's like, why aren't you just doing the form? And I said, we've never just done the form, okay? So I will tell you, I went to my cabal meeting
Oh,
and
yeah, we
said,
talked about that.
what do you guys do for RMS? And everybody at the table said, they just file the form, that's it. I said, okay, fine, we now just file the form. So the reason I'm telling the story is very little effort is put in to 120-day reporting conditions. So, which kind of surprised me because, but I think figured out what the standard of care was and we backslid from what we were doing.
Since you
So,
picked up my construction, well, finish your saying.
I wasn't picking on your construction. Remember you told me about a different story. But so if you ramp back to 120 day instead of like the 1 year anniversary, there may be like a degree of re-education or what kind of the level of effort that's really put in to a 120-day evaluation
But if
right
the
now.
choice is a 2-hour
I'm just saying that.
notification, you know, well, right now.
Right.
So we're talking about a universe of things that are currently captured potentially by a 2-hour notification. So we're trying to think about, we don't want to let go completely. We still want some kind of accelerated evaluation and response actions if necessary. But, you know, in this scenario, I guess, what's the incentive, just playing devil's advocate, for anyone to, unless it just happens to work out with their construction schedule or something, to do things unless they're required to before the 1 year?
Well, because as I recall,
Because
you
you've been only
can't,
coming to your one.
you can't, if the,
Yeah, but
if
that's-
this was
that's
a
a
construction
modest
site
thing.
scenario, and,
Right.
and the thinking was, I'm gonna dig it up anyway, let's
Yeah.
just leave it.
No way.
I thought you can't do a RAM on a site where you have an active IRA. So if that was the case and I couldn't file my construction RAM, I had to do it before. That
Either
would
that or
for-
all of your
force you to do it.
construction becomes an IRA.
Yeah, what, you could roll what you're doing into the IRA. You can always do more as part of your IRA.
Right, but
Or we can change the rate.
you don't wanna do
I
construction.
don't know, Steve, what do you, I'm interested to hear what you think about
I
this.
have to say, I was waiting to ask the question, this category of, you find the substantial hazard at, you notify it 120 days. My question is, what are we calling the substantial hazard? Is it things that we are currently calling imminent hazards? All right, so I'd be very concerned. I heard what you said, Juliana, about selecting certain pathways that really are not as urgent and giving people more time to do the testing. But I don't think waiting a year
Yeah.
is what I would advocate for.
So having an earlier trigger to do
Right.
something.
But this would
And I
not
also-
include indoor air for residents.
I understand,
yeah,
she's
yeah,
talking
yeah,
about soil and
yeah,
stuff like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I also don't think it should be a voluntary kind of a thing. I think it should still be done as an IRA, a required IRA.
So how about if, okay, so let's say we leave it, the initial notification the way it is now, but then you add the box to, that you have to perform a substantial hazard evaluation. And if you have a substantial hazard condition, it automatically puts you into tier 1, and then within 30 days, you have to submit an IRA plan, or
So don't
some.
go to tier 1 until the 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
No, but, oh, yeah, that's right,
It's
okay.
a year.
So if you,
So if you do your substantial hazard evaluation in 120 days and you take care of it before that first year, then you,
yeah, well, so they were, I advocated for that, but they were arguing that you might not necessarily have an LSP when you're making your notification,
No,
so.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
Oh, what, at
No, I'm saying at a notification.
Yeah.
I frankly think
No,
that that
I
would
think
be.
we may not have enough data. Joe's point was we may not have enough data.
Yeah, I like that, Paul. It's just a question of was the time, how long do they
Yeah,
have to do this?
30 days.
my thought, what I was hearing, I thought what I was hearing was, what you currently, for a certain subset of less urgent situations, rather than do a 2-hour notification, if you had 120 days, you would have time to get more data.
Right.
It's not get more data after the notification.
Right.
You have time to get the data, and then you'd be able to do your imminent hazard evaluation or substantial hazard evaluation, and then you could do your IRA if you wanted to.
So we have to
Or not
link,
want to,
we have to
yeah,
link
right.
the requirement for the evaluation to the notification, even for 120 days. And I think that's what Paul is saying, that you have to at least perform the evaluation either upon or before
You may
notification.
also
Within the
have a
first
pretty
120
minimal
days.
data set within 120 days.
It'd be more than what you'd have at.
Yeah, right. I
More
mean, remember where we are now. Like, so we have an obligation to look for 2-hour notifications based on whatever data we have right now. So,
Also, I think you could trigger, and this I think is what you're talking about, Sue, I think you could trigger if you have a substantial hazard at 120 days. But this essentially requires everybody to do a risk assessment immediately upon detection of anything above a reportable concentration. I mean, that's essentially what it.
not necessarily.
Yeah, it does. If you have to, every time you have a 120-day notification, if you have to do a substantial hazard evaluation.
Well, unless we have a list or triggers or something.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, how
And
that's
so-
done is
yeah,
kind
okay.
of up in the air.
But so I think you could either do that within some period of time, or you could just simply say that at 120 days, if you have a condition that is a substantial hazard, then that triggers an IRA at 120 days.
Yeah, but that's going back to what we initially discussed, and the fact that even you were saying that people don't necessarily have a risk assessor at the time of notification.
Well, that's what I just said, but then we're saying you could have a list of things, but it could be either or. And then that does give people the option to get more data, to try and demonstrate that it's not true, right, to get out of this week, or to do an LRA to address it, and that addresses short-term.
Or you have to do that before you report.
Right. So you have 120 days so basically at 120 days, if you have a substantial hazard, you're going into an IRA unless you've done something to mitigate it, and then now you're in an IRA and you have to do it.
Okay, so we basically end up in the same place, except it's just 120 days
That's
later.
right.
Yeah.
Unless
Which
you
is
write out.
good.
Well,
I think
Which is kind of
or-
where so we have 120 days
Instead of
instead of 2
72
hours.
To figure it out, get the data, and then evaluate.
Yeah.
Well, the LRA is interesting because you don't do LRAs with imminent hazards because you only have 2 hours.
Right.
But here you would have
You
time.
have, you would have,
Right, if you had a hotspot of arsenic or whatever,